What happens when a temporary employee turns out to be the only one who can save the entire system from collapse? What happened next brought a billion-dollar company to its knees and her name to the top where it always belonged. Lexi Watson lived by one unspoken rule: do your job twice as well, and you'll still get half the recognition, if you're lucky. And she was tired. Tired but not broken. Because if you stop doing the work, they stop seeing you. And when they stop seeing you, you might as well not exist at all. That morning started like 100 others before it. She came in early, not to brown nose, not to win points, and certainly not for the lukewarm corporate bagels in the break room. She came in because Josh, the new intern, had messed up the system permissions the night before, accidentally left the internal framework wide open like a window during a storm. If someone had noticed, really noticed, the whole operation could have been compromised. But they didn't, because noticing meant responsibility, and responsibility meant risk. Lexi didn't throw blame. She didn't point fingers or call out the boy in front of the team. That wasn't her. Instead, she fixed it, quietly, efficiently, like always. She patched the leak, restructured the permissions, and backed up the server logs. All before most of the office even walked in with their triple-shot lattes. She saved their backsides before they even had the chance to feel the fire. But instead of thanks, she got a gut punch. Loud, humiliating, and public. "You are not qualified to be touching those systems, Lexi." The voice cut across the office floor like a whip. Jared Hall, her manager, stood there with his arms crossed, eyebrows lifted like he had just caught a thief in his house. The room froze. Fingers stopped typing. Chairs creaked to stillness. It wasn't shock in his voice. It was performance. A power move. One meant to show everyone who was in charge and who wasn't. One that said, "This is where you belong. In the corner, doing only what we say when we say it." Lexi stood up slowly, calmly. She didn't flinch. She didn't fumble for an excuse. She didn't beg for understanding. "I just prevented a system vulnerability," she said flatly. "The servers could have been breached." "You're a temp," he shot back. "You don't have the authority to go poking around where you don't belong." A temperature. Of course. 4 years. 4 years of contracts under review, of meetings she wasn't invited to, of projects she built only to watch someone else present them to the board. And still she was temporary. Across the room, people dropped their eyes, pretended to work. One guy tapped his mouse just to make his screen wake up. Not one person stood up. Not one said, "She's right." Not even Josh, the kid whose mistake she just saved. He sat at his desk, looking like he wanted to disappear. Lexi didn't get angry, not visibly. What welled up inside her wasn't rage. It was fatigue, a heavy, bone-deep exhaustion that settled on her like a weighted blanket. That afternoon, she disappeared into the old tech storage room at the back of the building. No one ever went there. It was where dead monitors and forgotten chairs went to rot. But tucked in a corner was her own personal battle station. A dented metal desk, a scratched chair, and her old personal laptop. Her fortress. She didn't cry. She didn't report it to HR because she knew the drill: complain and you're disruptive. Stay silent and they pretend nothing happened. She didn't write a complaint. She started writing something else. She started watching. When they don't want to see you, you make it impossible to look away. From that day on, Lexi began documenting everything, not in some secret hacker way, but methodically, purposefully. She created a record, a living archive of every theft, every slight, every time someone forgot her name on a credit line or conveniently took her idea into a meeting without inviting her. She wasn't trying to burn bridges. She was building her own map. Every day she logged what happened, every incident, every change. Who did what? Who said what? How many times she was left off a distribution list? How many suggestions got approved when someone else repeated them later? Usually a guy named Brent. And then the inevitable happened. Jared, ever the showman, used her exact logic framework in a company presentation the next day. The one she had sent him 3 weeks earlier, marked as unreviewed. He wrapped it in buzzwords, put it in a slideshow, and sold it to upper management as his innovation. They applauded. He smiled. Lexi? She smiled too. Not because she was amused, but because she had every single timestamp, every email, every version saved. She didn't need them to acknowledge her anymore. She had stopped asking, because recognition is given immediately when it's convenient, and only forced into the light when the roof caves in. And Lexi was building her own storm. Hushed laughter, the weapon of office cowards. During lunch that day, someone cracked a joke by the coffee machine. Lexi probably saved the network again. Or maybe she's off building her own operating system back there. Snickers, side glances, the kind of chuckling that stings because it's not loud enough to address, but sharp enough to slice. She didn't look up. Not because she didn't hear, but because she was done pretending she cared for their approval. She saw through them now, their insecurity, their fear, their desperate clinging to mediocrity masked as culture, and above all else, their deep discomfort with someone like her being smarter, faster, and more capable. She stopped eating in the break room after that. Her lunches were by the window now, a quiet corner with her paperback mystery novels and a thermos of coffee. The good kind, from home, not the communal machine that seemed to leave a sour taste just for her. And then one day Josh came over. He fidgeted with his badge, couldn't look her in the eye. I heard they're thinking of letting you go. After that situation, I'm sorry. Lexi didn't glare. She didn't roll her eyes. She didn't lash out. She understood. He was young. He still believed silence was safety, that staying out of the line of fire meant you'd never get burned. Just pay attention, she said calmly. The wind's about to change, and you'll want to know who's standing where when it does. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon is the truth, loud and unapologetic. Lexi didn't go to HR. She didn't send anonymous complaints. She didn't threaten lawsuits. She gathered receipts, all of them. Her proposals denied, her questions unanswered, her contributions erased. She collected them like puzzle pieces. And every morning when she walked into that office, she added another email thread, another project edit, another instance of her name being replaced or removed. She was building a picture, not of vengeance, but of proof. Proof that she was never unqualified, that she wasn't temporary, that she wasn't invisible. They just wished she was. Silence ain't always weakness. Sometimes it's the sound of something about to break. The company operated on the backs of 3 people. Lexi was one of them. They just wouldn't admit it. Not yet, but she was preparing. Because when that facade finally cracked, when the tower they built on stolen credit and whispered dismissal started to shake, she wanted to make sure nobody could look away. Nobody. She wasn't planning revenge. She was planning recognition, the kind they couldn't ignore. Because soon they'd learn the difference between being invisible and being unforgettable. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how it all went down. 3 weeks, that's all it took. 3 weeks are enough time to learn to play the saxophone, enough to end a marriage, or, as Lexi Watson did, to cultivate a storm at the heart of a digital hive where she had been fed empty promises for years before being tossed out like a broken coffee grinder. After that initial confrontation, she stopped talking. She didn't argue. She didn't force polite smiles for atmosphere or casual nods in meetings. Lexi went back to doing what she did best, delivering results, on time, with precision, without fanfare, as if she were a well-oiled machine. But as the days passed, she met fewer eyes. Their glances contained the same hollow lines she had heard before. We appreciate you, and you're part of the team. Spare me, because those aren't apologies. They're masks worn by people who don't want to look you in the face and say what they really mean. In the evenings, after the last fluorescent lights buzzed off in the stairwell, Lexi would return home, kick off her worn sneakers, and wrap her grandmother's patchwork blanket around her shoulders. She didn't open a notebook or draft a complaint. Instead, she powered up her old laptop, its keys faded and scuffed, from her makeshift fortress in her small apartment, and launched Recall, the system she built in secret as a witness, an archive, an incorruptible observer, cataloging dishonesty she had long suspected was hidden beneath endless reports, PowerPoints, and the vapid slogan, "We're a family." Now into week 4, the first solar eclipse hit, and it didn't come from the sky. One Monday morning, the DevOps team lost access to their monitoring dashboard without warning. Nothing but empty screens where heartbeat signals used to glow. A senior developer noticed that code he had committed days ago vanished, replaced by blank placeholders. A data analyst, a black man with 6 years at the company, discovered his carefully curated reports were gone from the shared display. Cleared due to an update, they said in emails, but it came with no documentation or explanation. Still, no one had the courage to ask Lexi in full view, "Are you doing this?" Because though everyone suspected she had the power, she never once spoke up about it, so they couldn't pin anything on her. No, she wasn't breaking the system. She was simply turning on the lights. The art of invisible strength. Each day, Lexi kept wearing the mask. She didn't disappear. She remained unseen, but always there, present but unremarkable enough not to invite attention. She learned how to be unseen, but never taken for granted, quiet in conversation, but decisive in delivery, professional in posture, but always aware of how her silence was perceived. Behind her back, her name had already made its rounds. She didn't hear them say Lexi in presentations. Her contributions lost credit in official documents. Most recently, Jared stood in front of the leadership team boasting about a revolutionary auditing system he claimed as his own. But it was Lexi's creation. The system could track, trace, and reveal manipulations across dates, authorship tags, and team reports. Lexi didn't flinch when she learned about it from Josh, who stumbled across the investor presentation link. "I saw it," he told her later. "They're pitching your work as a management innovation." She exhaled a low, steady breath. "That's fine, Josh," she said softly. "They're stealing high. That means the fall will hit the hardest." The intensity begins. Wednesday came, and with it, the crescendo. The big launch day, the cloud platform that was supposed to reinvent how the company spoke to its clients. Jared arrived in a charcoal suit, his tie perfectly knotted, his smile tightly rehearsed, posing for the cameras and cueing the media team as though he were unveiling the next big thing in tech. He'd toured every demo station, high-fived employees, posed for photos, a king of LinkedIn smiling for his domain. And there in the background, Lexi stayed quiet, dressed in neat slacks, a sweater with no label, her hair in careful braids, her demeanor almost invisible unless you look close. Because close up, her eyes whispered that she knew the guts of 75% of that platform. Her hands had built the backup systems, the authentication layers, the rapid recovery modules. But the show was Jared's. Because that's how it works. After the final press flash, the office emptied, still mostly for official after-party chatter in the lounge. Once the lights dimmed and the last few cleaning crews folded tables, Lexi returned to her desk. Her chair creaked as she opened her laptop again, firm but silent. Her fingers hovered over the enter key. This was no attack. This was a signal. Recall rolled through its processes, scanning every admin-level action from the last 90 days, parsing timestamps, flagging deleted records, identifying mismatched authorship tags, linking copies of Slack conversations. Every quiet moment someone called her too active to be safe. Lexi didn't need loud. She just needed the facts. Then she saw it all. Full transparency. What emerges when the light hits? She discovered renamed commits from months ago, replaced summaries that removed her name. Lines of code edited, overwritten, then hidden. Slack messages calling her too disruptive to fit in. PowerPoint slides with her diagrams credited to others. It wasn't paranoia, it was orchestration. A plan: take Lexi off the stage, erase her credit, lift the work for management to claim, and cast her as the difficult contractor, if anyone asked. And in that moment, Lexi felt no vengeance. She felt resolve, because she knew that to unseat an empire built on quiet exclusion, you have to flood the halls with proof. The architecture of silence built on the bones of truth. Friday morning arrived with sunny skies and a packed schedule. Jared was on stage again for the media, smiling, polished, ready to unveil investments and partnerships. Media crews lined the edges of the room. Jared clicked through his slides about innovative auditing, with confidence oozing from every pore. And then, behind the scenes, Lexi activated the final step. On the internal servers, accessible to every employee, every manager, every contractor, Recall published a single, standalone report, The Complete Truth. The document contained screenshots, dates, authors, backup logs, the entire archive that had been hidden under buzzwords and excuses. It documented who deleted whose work, who changed credit lines, who ignored requests, who lied under oath about contributions. It was impossible to deny or ignore. Every desk had a window open. Every email client refreshed itself onto that report. Even the cleaning staff with their tablets scrolled through the evidence, eyebrows raised as the company's murmured defenses faltered. The chaos that unfolds. What in the world is happening? Is this a breach or a malfunction? Our clients are accessing this right now? Yes, they are seeing it. Because Recall doesn't just show truth, it broadcasts it so no one can pretend the truth didn't happen. Lexi didn't say a word. She didn't walk in shouting, "I told you!" She walked in like any Friday, coffee thermos in hand, hair still in perfect braids, the calm before they fell apart. Jared's phone buzzed. He saw the banner on his screen. Offices twitched. The board calls started. People ran from cubicle lines to conference rooms. Executives felt their suits tighten, their polite smiles stiffen. He caught a glance at Lexi, standing at her desk, and his face went pale, like someone caught with wet hands and no excuse. "You knew," he whispered, voice cracking. She turned, looked him in the eye. Not angry, no triumph. Equal. "You asked me to stop touching the system," she said, voice steady. I complied. And then, the silence after the storm. Legal shut it down. Servers locked. IT scrambled to isolate logs. Emergency protocol engaged. People cleared desks, monitors turned off, and phones lit up with anxious messages. Emails pinged leadership's cell phones, but they were locked out too. It was too late. The record was out. It had been downloaded, forwarded, printed, sent. Jared, desperate, summoned Lexi to the conference room, the one with glass walls and judgment seats for uncomfortable conversations. "This is your doing," he accused in a tremulous voice. "You've jeopardized everything. Our clients, our partnerships, our projections." Lexi didn't flinch. She stood and met him with calm authority. No cowardice, no pity, no apology. "When you said I wasn't qualified, you never asked what you were erasing," she said quietly but firmly. "When you stripped my name, you never asked why I wrote it. When you chose fear over truth, you chose silence. The turn that changes everything." Cliffhanger close. You don't want to miss how she faces them next and brings the hive crashing down. Friday morning started with corporate champagne dreams, streamers, clickbait headlines, and executives dressed like they were attending a tech Oscar ceremony. But by sundown, those dreams had turned into a full-scale digital funeral. No flowers, just files. The company website was gone, blank as a snowed-out TV channel. The servers? Out cold. Like a bear under anesthesia, everything vital to the system slipped into silence. Investors were refreshing dashboards like mad, expecting market trends and user metrics. Instead, they got one message. You asked for transparency. Here it is in full resolution. No logo, no branding, just that stark sentence followed by a directory, dozens of files named with dates, timestamps, and names. Inside, internal emails, quiet edits, documents revealing promotion rejections, all with a pattern too clear to ignore. Black employees passed over, discredited, erased, especially one name that popped up too many times to be coincidence, Lexi Watson. It didn't feel like a leak. It felt like Judgment Day had come, and someone coded the Lord's will into a Git repo. When silence tastes like fear. The office air was thick, and not just with panic. There was something else. Fear and its twin brother, shame. You could taste it like copper in the back of your throat. Jared Hall, who used to stroll the halls with an artisanal espresso in one hand and his ego in the other, now looked like someone had unplugged his batteries. He sat slumped in the glass conference room, an open space that now felt like a glass coffin. His phone buzzed every 2 minutes. Board members, legal, media. No one had answers, least of all him. And across that chaos, Lexi Watson, calm, steady, still in the same thrift store blazer, same sneakers she'd worn for 3 years, running across departments, fixing bugs that weren't hers. Her eyes were quiet, but sharp. The kind of quiet that says, I told you, you just didn't listen. And then the call, straight from the board. Ms. Watson, can you come to 12B? Immediately. No panic in her step, no quiver in her voice. She stood, tucked her badge into her pocket, and walked like someone who knew the difference between guilt and truth. Facing the room that never saw her. Room 12B wasn't a meeting room. It was a cathedral for decisions. The place where people in $8,000 suits made moves that affected thousands of lives without breaking a sweat. The chandelier reflected off luxury watches. The air smelled like cold cologne and old power. This time there were no handshakes, no greetings, just silence. The chairman, gray-haired, silver-tongued, the kind of voice you'd hear narrating a documentary on American history, broke it first. Ms. Watson, is there anything you'd like to say? Lexi didn't shift, didn't blink. She met his eyes and let the silence work for her. You've seen the files. That's everything you need. I wasn't trying to destroy anything. I was trying to survive. But that's hard to do when no one bothers to look down long enough to see what's beneath them. A director leaned forward, voice soft like he was afraid to admit what everyone now knew. Why this way? Lexi's reply came crisp and honest. Because no one would have believed me otherwise. Because when I speak up, I'm aggressive. When I stay quiet, I'm professional. Either way, I lose. This time, I didn't ask to be heard. I made sure you couldn't unsee it. The moment of reckoning, the chairman stood slowly, with the gravity of a judge about to deliver a life-altering sentence. Mr. Hall, you are relieved of your position, effective immediately. The room didn't gasp. It just exhaled, because everyone knew it was coming. They just didn't know how fast. Jared stood up so fast his chair slammed into the wall behind him. You can't do this. She compromised the company's systems. This is corporate sabotage. The chairman didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. You presented stolen work. You silenced your team. You falsified authorship. We now know who really sabotaged whom. Security entered like ghosts. No drama, just presence. Jared didn't scream. He didn't cry. He walked out, past Lexi, without looking her way. Because how do you look someone in the eye when the ground is swallowing everything you built on a lie? And then, the silence. The heaviest silence Lexi had ever stood in. Not because of fear, because of justice. The kind of silence that follows truth finally being spoken aloud. The unexpected offer. Another board member cleared his throat. Ms. Watson, your contract is hereby annulled. She nodded. She expected that. We would like to offer you a permanent role, Director of Information Ethics and Digital Integrity, with full authority to review all systems, protocols, and executive procedures, and the budget. You will answer only to the board. No one clapped, because this wasn't a victory parade. This was the hard road turning into real ground. Lexi didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just nodded again. Because when the system spends years pretending you're invisible, and you finally force it to see you, you don't need applause. You need follow-through. A new morning in the office below. Downstairs in the open floor of controlled chaos, things had shifted. Josh, the intern, who once avoided eye contact, watched Lexi step out of the elevator with a new badge clipped to her chest. Red, executive level, unmistakable. You're, you're official now? He asked, half in awe, half in fear. Lexi met his gaze. Not condescending, just clear. I'm not here temporarily anymore, and I'm not here because someone gave me a break. I'm here because I earned every line of code, every ignored email, every deleted slide, and I made sure none of it got forgotten. Recall didn't shut down. It evolved. Lexi didn't dismantle Recall. She didn't need it to spy anymore. She repurposed it. Now Recall wasn't a watcher, it was a memory, a ledger, an institutional reminder of what happened when voices were silenced. A system not for revenge, but for truth, clarity, and justice. So no one in that building could ever again say, I didn't know. And if they did, the system would remind them. Because memory is a weapon, but only when it's used with wisdom. When the world doesn't want to hear you, you write your truth into the walls. Lexi didn't rewrite history. She rewrote the code. First the code that kept systems running, then the code that built a culture of silence. Now the code that demanded accountability. She didn't scream. She didn't protest. She didn't burn anything down. She just proved them wrong, with logic, with evidence, and with the kind of strength that refuses to disappear. And so the fire begins. This isn't a fairy tale. It's not some glossy documentary ending with hopeful piano music. It's just the truth. Lexi Watson wasn't a hero because she exposed anyone. She was a hero because she made herself impossible to erase. And that fire, the one that started with a whisper in a storage room, it's still burning. Right now, in every system where someone's still pretending silence equals professionalism. Because sooner or later, another Lexi's coming, and this time the whole network's going to remember.